Love After Kids was designed specifically for couples that have struggled since having kids, which is a universal challenge with unique and identifiable factors and solutions. I feel humbled and honored that you're joining me today to help you get unstuck and transform how you think so you can find common ground and discover a new sense of togetherness with your partner. My hope is that through my voice, the content, and the work that we accomplish together, that we can build a virtual relationship where you feel supported and trust that you are where you need to be. Congratulations on making this decision. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to face your relationship head on and to reject the status quo. I'm excited to bring this content to you today because after working with hundreds of couples and on my own marriage, I know this is a proven system to get you back on track and revitalize your relationship. My goal in creating the Love After Kids program was to create a clear, accessible, practical, and affordable solution for couples that have grown apart since having children. You're likely here because you have at least one kid, and the massive changes that have come since becoming parents have taken a toll on your relationship and have resulted in falling into harmful patterns that the two of you just can't seem to break. You feel stuck in that smoochy pre-parent honeymoon phase where you could do whatever you wanted, when you wanted, feels like ages ago. There are many ways that having children inevitably takes a toll on your relationship. You've had exponentially less time and energy to devote to each other. Because you're so busy with work and raising a family, you've been hard-pressed to find the time and energy to devote to working on your relationship. You're more stressed and have more financial obligations. A host of new challenges and differences have arisen regarding co-parenting approaches and decisions. You have less time for each other, which has led to less communication and increasing resentment, isolation, and deprivation. As a result of all these inevitable, universal, and understandable challenges, you're likely struggling with most of the following: effective communication, maybe you're fighting more than ever, not feeling heard, feeling taken for granted, feeling misunderstood, feeling hopeless. Maybe there's a decrease in quality and quantity of intimacy and sex. Maybe you're fighting in front of the kids, feeling tired and depleted, trapped and stuck. Whatever the reason you're here, as daunting as it probably feels, I know from my own professional and personal experiences how well the information, tools, and resources can work. The Love After Kids program can be used in conjunction with therapy or as an alternative means of working on your relationship. Its advantages include the fact that it can save you a lot of time, money, and energy, plus you can both benefit even if just one of you participates. You just have to be willing to work at it, and like most things in life, the more you put in, the more you'll get out. With respect to relationships, few experiences are more universal than the changes that occur when children are born, and the unparalleled challenges that come with them. Yet people don't generally get the support and preparation they need for relationships and raising families, even though this is arguably one of the most profound and challenging journeys one can experience. I know it has been for me. My sincere hope is that this program will empower you to take control of your relationship via the knowledge, tools, and resources provided. I welcome any and all feedback related to the program. I won't make outlandish claims and guarantees, but I will say that I believe wholeheartedly in the material. I benefited from it personally and have helped hundreds of couples, including many in acute crises and with little hope, to find their ways back to each other. So who am I? First and foremost, I'm honored to be your guide on this journey. I'm a licensed psychologist, trained couples therapist, researcher, and creator of Love After Kids. More importantly, I'm a husband and father. I've been seeing individuals and couples for 15 years, which is the amount of time I've been in a relationship with my wife, Debbie. Our own journey, with all of its ups and downs and unexpected challenges, combined with all of my work helping people with their relationships, is what has inspired me to create Love After Kids. There are so many people out there that don't have access to therapy, or that have tried therapy but haven't benefited from it. But the challenges are still there, and most of us go into marriage and parenthood totally unprepared. The other huge factor that's inspired me are my children, and all of the kids out there that are directly impacted when their parents don't work on their relationships. I know this program works because we've been through it. All the spontaneity and being the center of each other's universe, seemed to get turned upside down on the 9th of November 2004, the day our son was born. But today, because of these tools I'll be sharing with you, I can unequivocally state that our love and devotion to each other is fiercer than ever. That doesn't mean that we don't struggle or go through ups and downs. Of course we do. But we've gotten better and better at recognizing, understanding, and dealing with the challenges as they arise. This is what you're going to learn in this course. I've been lucky enough to have studied in some of the most prestigious institutions in the world and feel truly blessed to love my work. In my private practice, I've helped hundreds of couples that have come to me in moments of crisis to understand why they were stuck and empower them with the tools to get back to what they thought they'd lost forever. For the last 5 years, I've been developing ways to translate these processes to help the countless couples that don't have the luxury of attending weekly couples therapy. Why now? Having kids places tremendous stress on the couple's relationship, and it often starts well before conception. According to the CDC, 7.4 million women, that's almost 12% of women, have received infertility services in their lifetime. 1 in 8 couples have trouble getting pregnant or sustaining a pregnancy. Most of us enter into parenthood very unaware of how to proceed and of what's to come. Most people taking this course have likely made it to the parenting stage. You've gone through childbirth, birthing plans that may have gone completely awry, nesting and preparing the home for your little one. But how many of you prepared your relationship for what was to come? When we bring another person into the mix, everyone is impacted. Please know that as a parent struggling to maintain a healthy relationship and family life, you are not alone. This challenge is extremely common, but its impact can be quite significant. We need to tackle this now because there can be many devastating impacts of chronic parental conflict on your family, including your children. Children are like sponges, and they're watching us all the time. They're sensitive to the tensions between parents, no matter how hard we try to conceal them. It's so important to provide them with a sense of stability and security during childhood, which they'll carry with them into adulthood. Many studies have shown the damaging effects of chronic parental conflict, as well as the positive effects and developmental outcomes of a truly aligned parental unit. How is chronic parental conflict harmful to children? It can negatively impact their mental health, make them feel unsafe, cause them to worry about taking sides, to feel guilty. It's poor role modeling for your children. It can decrease the quality of your parenting, and it may cause your parent-child relationship to suffer. Here are some other negative impacts of chronic parental conflict according to a variety of research studies. Negative effects of parental discord are found for both boys and girls. Children as young as 6 months may register their parents' distress. Marital conflict has been found to elicit negative, aggressive behaviors in children. There's a link between negative marital interactions and negative parenting behaviors. Destructive conflict styles are expected to lead to destructive problem-solving approaches and to negative social behavior in children. Children who live with parents who constantly quarrel may frequently become tired and ill, play less, and sleep poorly. Perceptions of parental marital conflict are associated with increased levels of distress in children. Marital conflict has been associated with a lower tendency of young adults to name their parents as people who can provide them with help or assistance. Chronic parental conflict affects children's levels of anxiety and self-esteem, which can carry over into adulthood and can affect their later psychological health. The experience of parental marital conflict often repeats in the relationships that children form as adults. Almost every study examining parental relationships and parenting has found the quality of the relationship between parent and child to be linked to the quality of the relationship between the parents. In other words, it's really hard to parent at your best when you're not relating at your best. It's also become increasingly clear that the quality and stability of couple relationships and marriages are linked with child, adult, family, and community well-being in so many ways. Remember this, you're in the right place. The 3 steps to revitalize your relationship are as follows. Step 1, recognize what's happening. Step 2, understand why it's happening. And step 3, change what's happening. You can do this, and I'm thrilled to guide you on this journey we're about to take together. Don't freak out, but I just want to spend a few minutes talking about neuroplasticity, epigenetics, and the revolution that has taken place in the past couple of decades, thanks in large part to advances in brain imagery technology. It used to be thought that our brains became hardwired in the first years of life and stayed that way for the rest of our lives. The truth is that our brains are changing all the time. Most people associate placebo with double-blind pharmaceutical studies, where one group gets the pill and another group gets a sugar pill. And it's amazing when we think that we're getting something that's going to have a specific effect, and we believe in it, and assign it meaning, that sugar pill often causes the same physiological changes as the regular pill. That's because our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs can keep us rooted where we are, or they can cause changes in our brains and beyond. There's a great book and documentary by Robert Sapolsky called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. A zebra can be grazing peacefully in the Serengeti, and suddenly it'll see a lion and its fight-flight system will be activated. It'll stop eating and get ready to react if the lion attacks. As soon as the threat goes away, it's relaxed again and grazing. We humans are different. We get stressed and the stress lingers and grows because it becomes part of a cycle of stressful thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, and pretty soon we're living long periods of time with our fight-flight system activated, even though there's no threat. This not only has an impact on our bodies, but it also sucks the space and energy to be creative and openness to connect. For example, imagine you're sitting at home on the couch and you suddenly feel a wave of sadness. That's an emotion. You recognize it and start to think, am I getting depressed? Why am I feeling this way? I don't want to feel this way. The sadness has transformed from the initial sensation into a feeling, which if it continues over time turns into a persisting state. Clinging to certain emotions or wanting to push them away only serves to create the opposite effect. We inadvertently create the illusion of permanence with the narratives and attributions that we come up with and subscribe to regarding emotions, feelings, and states. This creates a pathway to pain and suffering. Marriage should not be just a ceremony, a party, a ring, and a honeymoon, followed by kicking up your feet for the rest of your life. Aside from some tax breaks, marriage is a symbolic institution, yet for some it seems to be an invitation for complacency, and complacency is the opiate of relationships. Here's some signs of complacency. You're communicating less, you're stuck in certain relationship and parenting roles, you're assuming you know how your partner feels and what he needs, you're assuming you know how your partner will respond to you, so you don't even bother saying it. You're not expressing gratitude and appreciation to each other for the things that you do. You're not making an effort to spend time together. If you're listening to this and some of the signs are resonating and making you think about the state of your relationship, you're way ahead of the game. When you become complacent in your relationship and retreat into your own head instead of engaging with your partner, you kill curiosity and suck the air and the life from what should be a living, breathing, dynamic entity. But why would we do such a thing? Because the illusion of certainty and predictability is compelling. Here's a simple way to practice breaking out of complacency. The first step is recognition and awareness. If you stay immersed in a process, you can't take a step back and observe. You remain at the mercy of the beast. You're both depleted, exhausted, running on empty, deprived, and stuck in that tornado. It's the hardest to be empathic and to give when you feel depleted and deprived. What about me? The next step is acceptance. If you fight your reality, you'll lose. Lasting change comes from awareness, acceptance, and understanding, which is the third step. Tara Brach, psychologist, author, and teacher, speaks about this in an acronym that I share with a lot of my patients called RAIN. R is recognize what's going on. A, allow it to be there as it is. I, investigate with kindness and compassion. N. Non-attachment. When we fight against our experiences, judge them, wish them away, or grasp onto them, we prevent them from taking their natural course.
When it comes to changing habits, nothing feeds them as much as blindly following our daily routines, as individuals, couples, and parents. Now let's talk about routines. First off, we'll walk through some questions that will help you understand more of what's going on with your own relationship. These are all straightforward questions to get you thinking about and paying attention to your daily routine. In our battle against complacency, we vow to take nothing for granted and leave no stone unturned. We're going to shine a light on all of the things that we do, from small to big. Before we continue, please take the time to answer all of these questions about your routines and see what comes up for you in thinking about your responses. Don't just answer a question and move on. When you think about your morning routine, what are your interactions like with your partner? Is it a time when you feel you work better together or worse? Are there things you wish could be different about it? What's the energy like if and when you're getting the kids ready for school? Do you have breakfast together? Does it feel like you're working as a team? I've had so many couples that I've worked with fight about issues like cooking and cleaning and doing the dishes. These somewhat small things begin to be used as currency. For example, I do this, so you should do that. When the routine becomes a habit that isn't recognized or thought about, it's common to not recognize and appreciate what the other is doing, which makes you feel unappreciated and taken for granted. Now, think about your kids' morning routine. What do the kids need in the mornings? Do they tend to be anxious before going to school? Is it a time that they like to talk? How do you think they've unconsciously adapted to your routine and interactions with your partner? What I want you to take away from this exercise is to start cultivating an examining eye, asking why you do what you do, what feels right, what's missing. When you have kids, there isn't a whole lot of time available to spend with your partner during the week. For many people, that time is after the kids have gone to bed. If you're feeling distant from each other, that's probably reflected in your evening routine. Think about your evening routine and what it looks like. Do you have time to sit and talk with your partner about your days?
Is it a time when you feel more or less connected with each other? We've got this gift of love, but love is like a precious plant. You can't just accept it and leave it in the cupboard or just think it's going to get on by itself. You've got to keep watering it. You've got to really look after it and nurture it. John Lennon. What is a habit? For the purposes of this course, we're going to define a habit as a constellation of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are repetitive and often become part of how we define ourselves. Most people probably wouldn't think of thoughts and feelings when it comes to habits. Rather, they just think about the behavior that's associated with the habit, like smoking, drinking, overeating, etc. Those are all behaviors. Habits can be repetitive ways of behaving. They can also be repetitive ways of interacting, talking, thinking, and feeling. We can group habits into 4 categories, which all interact with each other. Obviously, they're not mutually exclusive. Thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and interactions all interact to contribute to habits in relationships. It's helpful to separate them out in order to understand how the different components contribute to the whole. Let's explore these 4 kinds of habits and more specifically, how each of them may play a role in causing you some disconnect from your partner. An example of a feeling habit, feeling unappreciated. Different things might make you feel unappreciated in your relationship. Maybe it's because you feel taken for granted, or it's just assumed that you'll do certain things and your partner never thanks you for it. Maybe you don't feel appreciated regarding the work you do taking care of the home, cooking, cleaning, or taking care of the kids. So how can this habit show up for you? Maybe he works and your job is taking care of the kids and the home, and you feel because you don't make money that what you do isn't appreciated. The fixed roles and the fact that it's taken for granted that you'll do X, Y, or Z feed the feeling of being unappreciated. It also makes it easy to assume he is going to respond in a certain way and to assume he thinks certain things about it. Maybe you brought it up at times when you felt especially hurt and you lashed out or fought about it, so it feels like a taboo subject or something that will lead to a fight, or that there's no point to talk about it because it always leads to X, Y, or Z happening. Maybe you don't express appreciation for things he does because he doesn't do it for you. Maybe it's not even something you're aware of. That's another important point when it comes to habits. They're automatic, reflexive, familiar, unconscious. The second type of habit is a thinking habit. And an example of this is thinking the other person doesn't care about you. This habit may show up for you in different ways. Maybe it's because he's less interested in sex, or he doesn't make an effort for the two of you to go out, or he doesn't ask you about how your day was, or how you're doing, or doesn't tell you he loves you, or hug or kiss you anymore. Maybe it's the way he talks to you. Maybe he's impatient with you or irritable. Maybe he talks very differently to others than he does to you. All of these different things contribute to the thought that he doesn't care. It's easy for thoughts to become assumptions. And thoughts become assumptions when they aren't corroborated. You think he feels a certain way, and you don't check it out with your partner. You just assume it to be true based on past or current behavior. The fact that you think he doesn't care about you inevitably influences how you feel and behave towards him as well. The third type of habit is a behavioral habit. An example of this would be eating meals in front of the television. Over time, you stopped eating meals at the table and started eating in front of the TV. The more you did it, the more automatic it became. The thoughts and assumptions behind this could be it's easier, more enjoyable, relaxing, and it prevents conflict. We have nothing to talk about anyway. He's not interested in what I have to say. We have nothing in common. It can feel comforting and relaxing, but it can also feel lonely and depriving. It can make you feel unloved or unlovable, resentful, hurt, angry, or sad. The fourth type of habit is the interaction habit. An example of this would be fighting about household chores. A fight or disagreement that you have over and over can become habitual. What makes it habitual is not just that you have fights over the same thing repeatedly, but it's also the related triggers, expectations, beliefs, and feelings and thoughts that come with the fight. Part of this could be because you both have roles that you've adopted and they don't really get discussed or changed up, and it just becomes habitual and assumed that you'll each perform your own roles. To be on the receiving end of this can make one feel it doesn't matter what one does because it won't change how the other feels, like you keep running into a wall. This habit may show up for you in several ways. Maybe your partner doesn't clean up after himself. That triggers you because you feel he just assumes you'll do it and that you should do it. It reinforces your feeling of being unappreciated. This is triggered by your partner leaving clothes on the floor. You ask him to clean it, and he either doesn't do it or asks you why you can't just do it. You tell him you're not his maid. He says he knows that all too well, and that people do things for each other in relationships. And he says that he doesn't ask why he should be the one that goes out and works. That, of course, infuriates you because you feel like he always holds that over you and uses it to make you feel bad. You suggest switching roles and seeing how he likes it, and he says he'd be happy to, and on it goes. So in general, there are four main factors that contribute to habit formation and continuation in relationships. Thoughts. What are the thoughts that are associated with the habit? What does it make you think about yourself, your partner, and anything else that's relevant? Feelings. What are the feelings that are associated with the habit? What does it make you feel about yourself, your partner, and anything else that's relevant? Behaviors. This is the most straightforward one. It simply refers to the actions that are associated with the habit. And triggers and interactions. What are the external and internal things that feed the habit or make it happen? Internal things, remember, refer to what happens inside you, and external refers to things other people say or do. Now we'll review some examples of some common habits that are associated with relationships. First one is how you greet each other when one of you comes home from work at the end of the day. Maybe he hugs and kisses the kids, but barely acknowledges you. So your thoughts or assumptions are, he doesn't love me, he only cares about the kids, I'm unattractive, he's having an affair. Possible feelings, hurt, anger, jealousy, lonely, deprived. Triggers, well, it was triggered by when one of you came home. And the behavior is not greeting each other. Another example is not going to bed together at the same time. Possible thoughts or assumptions, well, we've just got different schedules and routines. He'd rather watch TV. I'd rather watch TV. He doesn't want to spend time with me. He doesn't find me attractive anymore. Possible feelings, lonely, hurt, deprived, sad, angry. Triggers, bedtime, and the behavior is not going to bed together. Now let's talk about the roles we play in relationships. In romantic relationships, it's natural and healthy to play different roles in the relationship at different times, based on needs and circumstances. The ideal is to be able to shift between these roles, and for both partners to be able to play all of the roles at different times. The following are the core roles in romantic relationships: the mother, nurturer; father, supporter; child, dependent; friend, confidant; sibling, playful rival; and the lover. As you can see, the lover is the only role that is unique to adult romantic relationships. The rest are based on our formative relationships and the core needs that they represent. Again, in healthy adult romantic relationships, the ideal is that both members of the couple can play all of the roles at different times. Problems can arise, though, when couples get stuck in a specific dynamic and are unable to move into other dynamics when needed. Let's look at an example of this with Dale and Tasha. Dale and Tasha are married with no kids. She has a very high-powered job, and high-paying job too. She's used to being the boss and never being able to rely on others to take care of her. He freelances, and when he's out of work, it's easier for him to slip into depression and feel lazy, like a failure compared to his overachieving wife. He often feels like nothing he'll ever do will be good enough, so what's the point of even trying? He ends up letting go completely and feeding the self-fulfilling prophecy that he'll be a disappointment. Dale is stuck in the child-dependent role, and Tasha is stuck in the father-supporter role. This leaves Tasha resenting Dale for having to be the one to take care of everything, and also feeling like her own needs cannot be met. It leaves Dale feeling insecure and resentful, wavering between guilt that he's not living up to her expectations, and anger because her expectations are so high that nothing he does is ever good enough. The dynamic feeds on itself. The more it persists, the more they're stuck, and the harder it is to move into other roles when needed. Both of their roles have origins in childhood. Tasha grew up taking care of her siblings and of herself. She also had a very critical mother who always found fault in everything she did. Dale grew up with a depressed mother who encouraged him to stay home from school to keep her company. He was related to by her and his siblings as lazy and without promise. We internalize the ways that we're related to by our parents. Whether we like it or not, they often become parts of our personalities. Sometimes we rail against them, and other times we succumb to them and essentially become the people our parents want us to be. Railing and succumbing are opposite sides of the same coin. When we react without awareness, understanding, and an emotional connection, we're likely paving the road for repetition in the future. Think about the bully on the playground. He's going around and looking for the kids he can terrorize because it makes him feel powerful. At home, the bully's dad is doing the same thing to him. Bullies operate from a place of deep insecurity. Their behavior is compensatory because the pain of the vulnerability and shame is overwhelming. Now think about your relationship with your partner, the way it is right now, and ask yourselves the following questions. Do we each have a default role that we gravitate toward based on our respective childhood relationships? Do you feel like you're stuck in a role lock with your partner right now? If so, what are the roles? What do you think you and your partner are missing out on by staying stuck in these roles? Remember that awareness is half the battle. Now that you have the idea of roles and role lock on your radars, you can start to pay more attention to them. You can make a conscious and cooperative effort to experiment with stepping outside those roles as well. It makes sense that when we partner with people, that we both implicitly and explicitly take on certain roles. It happens with practical things like cooking, cleaning, finances, and shopping. It also happens with emotional roles that pertain to parenting or to the relationship. Good cop, bad cop is a common role lock that many couples fall into, where one parent becomes the strict disciplinarian and the other becomes the nurturer protector and more passive when it comes to rules. When couples become locked in roles, it can lead to mutual resentment. An important question to ask in this situation is, if it didn't start out this way, how or why did we become polarized? The polarization prevents both parents from experiencing the other role. It also prevents the children from experiencing the disciplinarian as the nurturer and vice versa. This kind of stuckness or rigidity tends to develop over time when communication falters and when partners close off to each other in some ways. It's understandable and somewhat inevitable given the challenges of working, raising kids, and maintaining a relationship. Try sitting down with your partner and thinking together about the areas, both in your relationship and as parents, that you feel are more rigid or polarized. Agree before you do this not to fall into the blame game trap. It's not about figuring out who's guilty and innocent. If you agree on a dynamic that's stuck, come up with some ways that you can both experiment with the other side. Try and be playful with it. Just the recognition and mutual exploration alone will help tremendously to loosen things up. When things become habitual, we look for them to repeat themselves, regardless of whether they are positive or negative. This is called the confirmation bias, which is the tendency to look for evidence that confirms our existing beliefs. When you expect to not get what you want, you'll tend to act in a way that confirms that negative expectation, which then creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. You may be thinking, wait a second, why would I sabotage my own needs? This is such a crucial question to think about. It's not rational, it's not conscious, but there is a specific kind of satisfaction that's derived from proving you're right about being a victim. Such pleasure can be so strong that it overrides the underlying need. People are often shocked when I explain this concept. They don't believe that they would do such a thing, but it's common human behavior. It doesn't mean that you have a bad relationship. Nor does it mean that you have multiple personalities. It means you need to work on how to communicate effectively. In conclusion, in this session you learned about disempowering habits you might have formed over time, how habits can be broken down into feelings, thoughts, behaviors, and interactions, and how we look for things to confirm what we already know and believe.